Welcome back. We are in Shadows of Jamestown. We are now in chapter 16. So let's figure out how the play is going to go. I'm not coming out. Oh, come on, Sam, said Derek from the hallway. You're probably wearing the same thing I am. It's not so bad. Sam looked at himself in the mirror. The costume Jada had given him seemed ridiculous. He couldn't believe the settlers of the New World could possibly have worn these kind of clothes. He had a high white socks that came up over his knees, black leather shoes with a square buckle, baggy red pants that seemed 10 sizes too big, and a matching red long-sleeve shirt that fitted tightly against his neck. To top it off, the droopy black hat he was supposed to wear seemed more like Donald Duck than it did Indiana Jones. He had let out a long sigh, opened the door to the hallway. Derek held back a laugh when he saw Sam step out of the bathroom. But since he was dressed similarly, he kept a straight face. He had some sort of cape draped around his shoulders, but like Sam's clothes, it was kind of weird, and it didn't remind him at all of anyone cool like Superman. Whose idea was this again? Said Sam grumpily. Derek shrugged his shoulders. All part of the deal, I guess. Where's Caitlin? Before he could answer, another door opened from the hallway, and Caitlin stepped toward them. Well, what do you think? Wow, you look great, said Derek. He nodded at Sam, who still hadn't said anything. Right, Sam? Yeah, Sam finally replied. He'd done a double take, but not because she looked bad. He couldn't help but notice that Caitlin looked very pretty, but her costume wasn't what he'd been expecting. She was in a colonial-style blue and white dress with a poofy skirt, sleeves that came down to her wrists, and a bright red sash. I thought you'd be wearing an Indian costume. Caitlin nodded. I know, I was surprised too, but Jada said that since we're reenacting the wedding, Pocahontas would be wearing English clothes instead of her traditional Powhatan dress. Huh, said Derek. Who knew? Look at you three, exclaimed Jada, walking down the hall behind them. You look fabulous. She handed them a small binder. What's this? Asked Sam. Your script, of course. We don't have to memorize it, do we? Asked Derek. I perform best when I can improvise. He flashed a cheesy grin. No, you don't have to memorize it, said Jada, but let's try to stick to the script today, okay? We don't need to start revising history for the kids. Sam was wondering if he could revise his decision to be in the play. Digging for artifacts with Toby had been a lot more fun than dressing up in this clown suit. His arms were itching, and he already felt sweaty despite the air-conditioned hallway. They had just about made it through the script, and much to Sam's surprise, it was kind of fun. Well, it wasn't exactly what he'd choose to do on a normal day, but it wasn't as bad as he'd expected. The worst part was the costumes. He couldn't imagine how the explorers wandered through the forest in these clothes. He hoped for their sakes they had found more comfortable clothes for normal days. It was fun watching the faces of the little kids in the audience as they performed the play. Sam had never been in a play before. The most he had done was read aloud in class. At home, he often felt like he must be on a hidden camera TV show because of the way Derek always carried on. But so far, no one had showed him the footage. Just as he and Caitlin moved toward the final wedding scene, thunder boomed overhead and rained in for them. The audience all scattered in the flurry, running with their families back to the museum. Ah! Screamed Caitlin. Let's get out of here, Pocahontas, called Sam. Follow me, yelled Derek. This is another loud thunderclap. The clouds above them. He ran along the path toward the museum, but by the time they reached the Indian village, all three of them were soaked to the belt. Derek pointed through the rain to the Indian house that had played in the floor, and they all squeezed through the doorway. I'm drenched, said Sam, trying to catch his breath. The clothes felt even more awkward when they were wet and weighing him down. Caitlin collapsed next to him on the bench covered with animal hides. That was crazy. I guess we won't be able to do a curtain call, grumbled Derek. Sam looked at him sideways. You really liked that, didn't you? Derek nodded. Yeah, it was awesome, don't you think? I liked it too. It was fun, Caitlin said. I suppose so, said Sam. He didn't think he'd be signing up for another play anytime soon, but he could easily believe that his brother enjoyed being the center of attention. Caitlin, too, in her own way. What do we do now? Asked Caitlin. Wait for the rain to stop, I guess, said Derek. Another loud boom of thunder shook the hut, and Sam jumped. That was close. Don't worry, I'll protect you, Sam, said Caitlin, draping her arm around his shoulder. He frowned and scooted away her on the bench. He didn't like storms, but he didn't need Caitlin making fun of him either. He felt ridiculous enough in these clothes. Derek peeked his head out of the doorway of the hut. The whole path is turning into a little river. If we get much more rain, we'll have to sail on one of those ships to get out of here. You can take the sea turtle, said Sam. So why do you think the professor wanted us to do all this anyhow? Asked Caitlin, changing the subject. He said he got called away, replied Derek. And I bet it has something to do with the letter from the Smithsonian and the fake artifacts. The mention of the letter made Sam think about something Caitlin had mentioned earlier. What did you say about the fort and the ships? That they were cool, said Caitlin. Sam shook his head. No, you used the word when you described them. I did? She uses a lot of words if you haven't noticed, Sam, said Derek. You said they weren't real. Oh, remembered Caitlin. Replicas. It means they're reproductions. Fakes? Asked Sam. Kind of, said Caitlin, but not necessarily in a bad way. Why? The letter, my base, the ships, Sam said slowly. He tried to verbalize what had been floating around in his mind. It was right there, but he couldn't quite see it. Do you want to put the letter in the vase on the ship? Asked Derek. I think you got too much rainwater on your head, Sam. Or maybe that costume is too tight and cutting off the oxygen to your brain. Stop, said Sam, frowning. Think about it. What do they all have in common? Caitlin's face brightened. Wait, I see what you mean. She was quiet for a minute. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Maybe. Sam stood and began pacing around the hut. What if someone is purposely making replicas of the artifacts from Jamestown and passing them off as real? Why would they do that? Asked Derek. You heard what Toby said over at the dig site when Sam found the vase, said Caitlin. These artifacts are priceless. They're worth a fortune. So, someone is selling them? Asked Derek. Maybe. Caitlin tipped her head to one side. But what does that have to do with your vase, Sam? Jamestown's vase, said Derek. Sam shook his head. It didn't seem like his brother was going to let that one go. The sparkles, they changed. I know it. They were the best part, but when I looked at the display case in the archaearium, they were different. Maybe you misremembered them, said Derek. Sam shook his head. No, I'm not sure. Then something clicked in his mind. And I can prove it. You can? Asked Caitlin. How? Sam reached into his pocket for his phone, but once again it wasn't there. What is it? Asked Caitlin. I had my phone. I could show you the picture I took of the vase in the lab. It would show the sparkles. You didn't lose it again, did you, Sam? Chuckled Derek. Sam glittered at him. No, I didn't lose it. It's in my other clothes back at the museum. We have to go back and get it. After it stops raining so hard, said Derek, looking at the doorway. Do you really think the professor's in trouble? Asked Sam. I hope not, answered Caitlin. But if people believe he'd been trying to pass off fakes as real artifacts, that could be really bad for Jamestown's reputation, not to mention his. Sam shook his head. He doesn't seem like someone who would do that. They'd known the professor ever since they brought him some stolen coins that Derek had found in a cave near their house. He always reminded Sam of a jolly old grandpa, or the guy who made dinosaurs like in the Jurassic Park movie. Of course he isn't, said Caitlin. That's why we have to help him. Easier said than done, said Derek. Well, if it isn't the professor who's sending the fakes to the Smithsonian, that means someone else must be doing it, said Sam. Remember how Jerry was trying to steal a copy of the Declaration of the Independence behind the Wythe House? Said Derek. It could be someone like him. Sam shivered thinking about Jerry. They'd beaten him to the treasure on another adventure, and Jerry had not been happy about that. Maybe it is Jerry, said Derek, his eyes bulging. Sam straightened up the bench. It can't be Jerry. He's in jail. He looked at Caitlin, trying to think. Isn't he? I think so, she nodded. But we don't know how long he was put away for, do we? Asked Derek. Maybe he just got a stiff fine and now he's on parole. He looked around the hut suspiciously. Maybe he's watching us right now, plotting his revenge. Williamsburg isn't that far away from here, you know. Sam didn't really know how the court systems worked, but he thought he remembered his dad explaining criminals who get out early on parole if they behaved in jail. The only person he ever met who had been in prison before was Mad Dog DeWitt. He was the leader of the Confederate Ghost Biker gang that helped him on their adventures on Belle Isle and at Swannanoa. But he wasn't anything like Jerry. "I'm not sure it's not Jerry," said Caitlin. Sam tried to put the idea out of his mind. "Well, whoever it is, we have to get to the bottom of it." "Agreed," said Derek. A radio squawked outside the hut, and they heard footsteps splashing in the puddles. Jada's face poked through the doorway. "You kids okay in here?" "Yeah, we're just trying to stay dry," answered Caitlin. "Well, don't get too comfortable," Jada looked concerned. "Toby just radioed that they need your help right away over on the island. The storm has caused all kinds of problems with the dig site, and they need all the hands they can get." "Oh no!" exclaimed Caitlin. "Let's go," said Derek, piling out of the hut behind Jada. "Let me drive you," offered Jada. "It's quicker." Sam looked down at his wet costume. What about our clothes?" "No time," said Derek. "I'll hold your other clothes in my office," said Jada. "You can come back over and get them later." Sam shrugged reluctantly as he raced behind Derek and Caitlin, jumping over the puddles as they followed Jada to a car in the parking lot. His phone would have to wait. So there's been some weather-related flooding going on over at the dig site, so let us pick it up in chapter 17 and we'll try to bail out the dig site. We will see you then.